Now, your weekly dose of inspiration, perspiration, and just the right amount of bull defecation. The Get You Some Radio Show with your host, the Vice President of Making Shit Happen, Terry Lancaster.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to the Get You Some studio, and I'm your host, Terry Lancaster. I have a great guest lined up for you today. I'm going to be talking to Kathi Kruse. Kathi is the author of Automotive Social Business 2.0, and she was so gracious. I have not one, but two copies of Automotive Social Business 2.0. We're going to give those away this week, so we're going to have not one, but two subscribers of the week this week, and each subscriber of the week is going to get a copy of Kathi's book, Automotive Social Business 2.0. Now, Kathi is an automotive consultant for car dealerships, and what she does is she takes a 10,000-foot view and helping car dealerships navigate this path that we've been on for the last 20 years, going from a bricks and mortar business to a clicks and mortar business. Now, don't worry, if you're not in the car business, I kind of think of the car business as a canary in the coal mine, because if your business hasn't gone through these changes, it's going through them at least to some degree. So we're going to talk about those changes, how the car business has changed over the last 20 years, and where the car business is going to be going for the next 20 years, because in my mind, the next 20 years are going to make the last 20 years look like smooth sailing. We're going to talk about social selling, and this is applicable for everyone, how salespeople can take advantage of these changes that are going on to boost their bottom line, to increase their referral network, and make more money for themselves and their business. And finally, Kathi's going to give me a chance to talk about my favorite subject, the role of mindfulness in the sales process. Kathi, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for letting us talk to you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And before we jump into all that, tell us about Kathi. How'd you get here?
My grandfather was a dealer in the 60s in downtown Los Angeles. I got in the car business very early, but not working for him because he passed away actually before I was of working age. But I played with Hot Wheels and Matchbox, and I really despised Barbies, truly. And I built model cars and stuff like that. So a dealer that I worked at a bank when I was in college, and a dealer hired me to be his sort of assistant. And then I asked him if I could sell cars. He said, yeah. And I used to see the controller walk in the store every morning, all mysterious, and people would be afraid of him. But I thought, well, maybe he's got some work for me to do. So I approached him, and he would give me minor stuff. And then pretty soon he figured out that I could do his work while he went to golf. So I did everything. And while it was, you could go the negative route and say it was a lot of work and a lot of things that, they got for free kind of, but I saw it as a car business university.
Yeah.
And I've worked every job in a dealership. So I think that's what makes part of me unique when I, bring what I do now, because I have a way of looking at each department and how they interact with each other so as to get to the goal of, making money. So that's what brought me here. And then into the social space was just the recession. And I quit working retail in 2008 and shifted gears and went into the social space because I saw there was going to be a need inside the store, an internal process for engaging with customers via the online channels, and especially with online reviews. So that's kind of what brought me here.
So you concentrate there, and the car business has been bricks and mortar. It's been for 100 years, but the last 20 years with the internet, and the last 10 years, especially when mobile taken over, the car business is almost like an e-commerce business. How do you get dealers who are oftentimes stuck in their ways because they've been doing this a long time, and I've been making money at this for a long time, and why should I change? And you can't sell a car over the internet, and everyone wants to drive a car, just get them in. How do you get these to integrate into one? How do you get the synergy going? How do you get one big functional unit out of the whole thing?
I think if you ask every person in the business, the dealer on down, everyone would admit that sales is changing and customers have changed and there's less foot traffic. There's different ways that people are communicating. They may not want to admit it, but they know it. And that that getting from that to changing the way that the business is going from the bricks and mortar to sort of an e-commerce, I think, to me, I was just thinking about this the other day, that is such a huge shift. It's like a different business model. And I mean, I hate to say this because, again, I was talking about this the other day, but, you know, new car dealers they're franchises, and the manufacturer has traditionally been and still is a partner, but in my experience, you know, since the 80s, it was a supportive, like, help us sell as much as possible. But with now that we're in this sort of business model changing kind of aspect of things, and it's not done changing, there hasn't been a lot of support from the manufacturer. So dealers are trying to do it themselves, and it's very difficult to change that business model, especially when you're not in the space. Like some dealers or their managers, some of them are already in the space. They understand like social selling and having salespeople meet customers online, just like they would if they were in the store. But there's a lot that aren't in that space and navigating it. So I see kind of the manufacturers kind of missing an opportunity there to really help sell more cars by being more supportive with training and information. It's just the level of that right now is very poor.
Well, I kind of actually look at it. I think the manufacturers are almost more of a competitor now, because in the role I've been doing advertising for years and years. And it used to, you know, back in the good old days, nobody cared what I said in the ads. The manufacturer could not care less anything about what the ads. You say something and sell cars, you're all good to go. And now every manufacturer has this big giant approval process that you have to go through to get their ad say. And they're actually shaping the image, and they're battling for control of the relationship that people have with the consumer. So there's the first tier marketing and the second tier marketing and the third tier marketing, and they're kind of melding because they're all jumping past all of that and going straight to the consumer. And I think, you know, the manufacturers are just as much a competitor as everyone else. They're selling leads.
Dude, I totally 100% agree with you. I just said that the other day because it was like, without that support, you know, it was the subject of preferred vendors. So the manufacturers, they name these preferred vendors, and I'm all for preferred vendors. I love that, except unfortunately, these preferred vendors have really, really poor products. Mm-hmm. They aren't going to get the dealer where they need to go today. The products are based like if it was 7 years ago or 10 years ago. And so yes, competitor, but you know, there's no reason to have one or the other. If there was some serious strategy worked out between the manufacturer and the dealer, like what can we do to further along the brand? So if it's a Ford, for instance, if it's a Ford brand, the manufacturers, that world of the manufacturer's world is more getting the brand down and the interest in the brand as opposed to like a Chevy or Dodge. Mm-hmm. And then have a strategic plan for having the dealer take what that message is and then incorporate it into the dealer's, lack of a better word, brand, okay? Because the dealership has a brand. They are a local business that people know. They have repeat customers that love them. It can happen, but so far I have not seen really any successful outcome of that.
Well, the consistency, in my mind, the consistency that they're all striving for and all their consultants are telling them they have to have, that's eliminating the chance for each dealership to differentiate themselves. Bob's Ford in Los Angeles and Joe's Ford in Los Angeles, by requirement, have to pretty much look and sound exactly the same. So in that world, how does the dealer differentiate himself from his competitors?
Exactly. And I'll give you an extreme example. I managed Beverly Hills BMW. And I worked in Beverly Hills for a long time, 15 years in the automotive retail environment. And there is a very specific customer. It requires you to get really good at customer service, at communicating with the customer, at following up on things when things go wrong. It improves, it raises the bar. But the customer is very specific. So we had a large public company buy that dealership, and that public company, they were based in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Very different environment, very different customer. Okay, couldn't be more opposite probably in some cases, but they were wanting us to sell cars the way that they did because their model worked for them, but that model didn't work for us, and that's kind of it's a illustration that's kind of the extremes, but the reality is if, a dealership in Beverly Hills and a dealership in North Carolina have a very different approach to way the customers want to engage. And since the customers are in charge and it can feel like you're out of control sometimes, if you tap into that, like why my customer was buying from me, who are we, why do people buy from us, then you're going to get a lot further and not feel so much like you're out of control.
Yeah. Well, one of the things the different, matter of fact, I was reading in your book a little while ago that every person has three things that differentiate them that no one else can ever duplicate: your name, your face, and your experience. So one of the things that's going to differentiate one dealership and one business from another is the salespeople. And I've started hearing this term. I've heard it bandied around as fourth tier marketing, that we've gone past the manufacturers and we've gone past the dealer groups and we've gone past the dealerships. And the real battle is happening hand-to-hand content in the trenches with the salesperson. And that's where social selling comes in. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, you just had Mike Carrera on, and he's a good friend, but he's also one of the guys and gals that really understand how to communicate who he is. He and I were we did a case study. I did a case study with a gal named Renee Stewart on social selling quite a few years ago. We were pretty ahead of things. It's probably 6 years ago now. And, but he has really, like, his numbers speak for themselves and what he does. And I think that but you're right, this hand-to-hand combat. And I think if it's a dealer, whether they're a new car franchise or they're independent or somebody like a CarMax, the salespeople, I always like to say, like, your customers online and your inventory's online. So why wouldn't your salespeople be online? And in making them ready to be online too. There's another component to it, like having them, some of them aren't ready for prime time just yet. No, right. Mike's honed his brand for years and years, and he understands exactly what his customers are looking for and how to find new customers, because finding new customers is important. So, I think that if dealers or managers, because there's another component of the middle management, whether it's the general sales manager or just in between the owner and the GM and the salesperson, there's a lot of mud I see there. I see no buy-in. I see just no acceptance towards this. And if in fact you are trying to become a e-commerce business, then those managers are going to have to change their minds. They're going to have to understand that the salespeople really are like, people buy from people.
Yeah. Yeah, people buy from people. That's the bottom line, 100%. And you mentioned the salespeople being not ready for primetime players. So we really you have two problems. You have the people who are completely against it, and then the fad of the week, and people who jump in and not really. And you talked about this in the book. People jump in and they don't really have a plan. They don't really have a strategy. They just know that everyone else was doing a bucket challenge this week. Well, I should do a bucket challenge, and they put that post on. And next week they're doing a push-up challenge, and the next week they're posting videos of their cat, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So they put the cart before the horse. So what are some things they need to get together, to get their act together before they start going full bore?
Well, definitely they need to understand that differentiating yourself, because you have your name and you have your experience and you have your image. What's different? Because in all marketing, just traditional marketing, what is the differentiator? What makes you different that makes people remember you? And identifying that as a person, like, what makes me different? And then being able to communicate that. Now, there are tools out there, and Renee Stewart, for one, she's a coach that does that kind of thing, that will actually take you along the path to help you discover what it is that makes you different. And because if it's foreign to you, it's very difficult to just jump in and try to say, oh, well, I'm different because, and a lot of people will say things like, oh, I've been in the business for 20 years.
Right.
Well, that's awesome, except other people can say that, and it's not quite dialed in enough. And if you don't have it dialed in, then it's going to end up going everywhere. And we all know everywhere does not work. It needs to be more defined and memorable. So definitely have who you are and what makes you different. And then I would say practice creating or sharing content that your customer or your prospect is looking for. Whether you've written it, great. If it's written it, or if you have a podcast, or if you have, that's probably a little too far to go, but videos, some kind of way to show your expertise.
Yeah.
And you can do that also by sharing good other people's content too, and reaching and trying to engage people online. And don't try to go for everybody, because the people that want to reach everybody, that old traditional marketing, are the people with all the budget. Like, there's only so many people that can afford to like put an ad on the Super Bowl.
Right.
Okay? That reaches everybody. It's the race to like whoever can spend the most. But salespeople and dealers, for that matter, you don't have all the money. You're not spending millions of dollars. So how are you going to reach those people? And so think of more targeted, closer audience, closer into and align with the values that you have, and those that can engage, that feel like good engaging with you, and you with them, like just a relationship. I know, for lack of a better term, relationship. We test that term around, but
and we all have the same budget and time wise, and this social media is not cheap in money, and it's not cheap in time, but we've all got a 24-hour a day budget to work with there. So you have to pick your battles. And I actually was having this conversation with someone yesterday, and they said, well, how do I decide? I'm on Facebook, and I'm on YouTube, and I'm on Pinterest, and I'm on Instagram, and how do I decide where I want to spend my time? And I love the way you said it in the book. Jump in and spend your time working with the platform that scares you the least.
That's right.
Yeah. So, any other ways to help you find your battle there?
Yeah, I termed it that way because I could say, go where you feel the most comfortable, but that might be just a little too, I don't know, kind of not motivating. So
right.
And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear.
Right.
So if you're brand new, what scares you the least, and just choose that way. And then I would say the second thing is, if you're so inclined, because another component of that would be, try to think about where your customer is spending the most time. There's some people that enjoy Twitter. There's some people that enjoy being on Instagram, and you'll find customers on those platforms if you're engaging regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And Facebook too. Facebook's getting more difficult to engage anybody, really. If you've got a page, if you've got a personal profile, then
right.
absolutely. But,
right.
If you don't have a budget to promote anything that you do on Facebook as a page, then you're not going to really get very far. So yeah, scares you the least. And then take into consideration, if you live in somewhere that, like, I have a client down in Jackson, Tennessee, and they're not too far from Memphis, but it's not really metro area, but it's not really, it's not really like rural either, but their customers aren't really using Twitter. So I always say, go where, put your effort to where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Jackson, Tennessee. That's just around the corner. So.
That's right. You're right there.
Yeah, about halfway there. And we talked about differentiation. One way you can differentiate yourself is I tell people, and everyone tells this isn't new information, but you can't be selling all the time. You can't come on and it's not broadcasting. You're not having the $199 down a month sale, and you can't hit that 24 hours a day. You have to have something else to talk about. And one thing that people I know used to talk about, because you do this, and my buddy Kenny Landrum does this, is they all have something that they support. Kenny is a big advocate for child seat safety, and he pushes those. And you're a big advocate for animal rescue and working with the horses. So talk a little bit about that and how it differentiates you.
Yeah, that's a big component. For a long time, I've been an animal advocate my entire life, really, and I've migrated over into activist, actually. But for a long time, I didn't want that to be part of my business. Well, I think it was kind of, we didn't do that often. It was part of like what you did, but it wasn't something you broadcast. And it's hard for us to broadcast things about ourselves. But then I realized, well, if what I know about what's going on, if I can tell other people, it'll help the horses, and it'll, because the things that are, especially now, that are going on, most people don't really know. And so it's really just, I can further that information. So I would say that, try to get over the hump. If you are volunteering, or if there is something that is close to your heart and you're already doing it, don't be afraid to share that content on wherever you are, Facebook or Instagram or somewhere. And because the more you do it, you'll get feedback from those that are following you, and they'll guide you. Now on mine, because it is horses and part of it's wild horses, it ventures into the policy of the United States of America, and that can get into a kind of a political kind of bent. So I've gotten, a few people that look at it like, oh, she's going political, but be willing to like, those are going to happen. And that's okay, because not everybody is right for everybody. And I'd rather have those that are believing and understanding the issue and want to do something about it. I'd rather work around those people and engage with those people than the ones that are going to be naysayers or argue because something else is a different way. It's I don't mind, questions. We love questions, but when it starts looking like something different because of their beliefs or maybe their perception, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just try it and see. And because we all have things we do, whether it's in our hobbies, or, I practice yoga, or I'm on the board of the horse rescue and I'm advocating there. We all have our little activities that we do outside of work, and we're not all just robots working. And I think if you can share that, maybe you like to garden, there's things that if you just, in this idea of identifying who you are and differentiating yourself, that's what makes you you. And those people that are like other gardeners, if you're a gardener, you like to garden, people will feel more closer to you and start actually, that starts developing more trust. And then that in turn, as we all know, those of us that have sold cars, then you're going to be the one they're going to ask about, hey, what do you think about this model car? And, that kind of thing.
Well, and everyone thinks of this as kind of a new process, but friends like to buy from friends, and they always have. And that's why people went to the Rotary Club, and that's why people played golf, and they go and they talk about their kids, and they talk about all this stuff, and they build a relationship as an authentic human being. Because if you're just selling 24 hours a day, you're not an authentic human being. We're all multifaceted creatures. We need to not be afraid to share some of these other aspects of ourselves.
I totally agree. And I also should add, I want to add that it's okay to talk about the selling part of it, because some people go the other way and they go, oh, I feel like I'm going to spam somebody. But if you do it in a way where you're illustrating to the audience what it's like to work with you. So maybe you've got like an awesome story around a customer. Maybe they were getting the first car for their daughter for college, or the wife's birthday, or whatever the case. If there's an interesting story and you can document that some way, even with just a short testimonial video or something, that illustrates what you're doing without being salesy. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that you'd want to have in your process of where you're sharing content or creating content for your prospects.
All right. Now, so speaking of differentiating yourself and sharing yourself, I'm going to come out of the closet, Kathi. I'm a redneck from Nashville, Tennessee. I've worked in the car business for 30 years. I play ice hockey on a beer league ice hockey team with a bunch of grown men spitting and cussing and scratching their groin regions. And I also practice yoga and mindfulness.
You do.
I do. And so
it's yoga. Awesome.
Oh yeah. I do what I call naked yoga. It's not really naked, and it's not really yoga, but going on my deck, scantily clad, jumping around and stretching didn't have the same ring to it. So I like to stretch and I meditate. There's two things I do every day, hell or high water. I run every day and I meditate every day, every single day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's changed my life. And so I talked about it everyone I can, and most people look at me like I've lost my ever-loving mind, because most of the people I hang around with aren't yoga meditation kind of people, and nobody's got magic carpets and candles that they're burning. Yeah. And so, but in your book, I was reading through there, and it talked about, again, the role of mindfulness, not in reaching nirvana, not in going off into a mountain, but in mindfulness to help you sell more stuff. How does mindfulness help you sell more stuff?
I think first and foremost, because I meditate as well, I practice yoga every day, and just kind of depends on, how much. But especially in auto retail, there are customers in the service department too. Customers are in your face every day, and the stress of just retailing vehicles in whatever capacity, whether you're salesperson, GM, and everywhere in between. Even the office staff, there's so much stress, and having just a short connection to yourself in the morning for even 5 minutes, guided meditation. There's lots of really great 5-10 minute guided meditations. Shoot, you can use your phone there's a great app called Calm.
Yeah.
And it could get you into a practice, and 5 minutes, and just do it. I would challenge you to do it they always say it takes 3 weeks to make a habit. So try it for 3 weeks, and things will start changing. It's changing you'll feel calmer, you'll feel more motivated. And with regard to mindfulness, the term mindfulness, there's, I was saying this to a group I was on a panel, and I was saying that, everybody needs to get up. It was a panel of, or a conference for dealers. And everybody needs to understand that, everybody meaning dealers, really to get out of this denial that it's fun to go to a dealership, because it's not. And so few people really address that. And part of it is the customer just doesn't feel, when they go to a dealership, they don't feel like they can trust anything that's happening there. And there are dealers and organizations that are perpetuating that feeling in the customer, still today. But if you're practicing mindfulness, it causes you to have more compassion for yourself. And if you can have more compassion and understanding for people, these people are buying vehicles and servicing vehicles. When you're buying a vehicle, it's a milestone. It's something that the person will never forget what's happening. And when you're inside the dealership working, that's just, it's like another day. And so just stop for a moment and understand that the customer is a milestone for them. Same in service. They're there getting their vehicle worked on. They could have broken down on the freeway. They could have had a flat tire. These are things that they will probably tell their friends and family for years if something good happened or if something bad happened. So, so mindfulness helps you, I think, understand the customer, helps you understand yourself better, give yourself a break, and then have compassion for customers. And maybe that could turn, I know that might seem idealistic, but it might turn this idea of being in a car dealership is worse than having a root canal. Because that is the reality. Okay? And in going into the future with all the disruption that's happening to just the dealership model, or just automotive transportation in general, we're going to have to get on our game here. And because we could wake up in a few years and things can be very, very different.
Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, I'll ask you real quick because we're about to run out of time, but how do you think things are going to be different over the next 10 to 20 years? I read a big article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that outlined the future of the car business, and from everything from autonomous cars to car sharing to car subscription services to a whole bunch of things that didn't say going to buy a car every 3 years in a dealership. So what do you think the car business looks like 10, 20 years down the road?
I think ownership is going to be something like, someone said that the way that, I don't know if I agree with it, but someone said that the way that smoking was years ago, that everyone smoked and then all of a sudden it became like, ooh, through realization. Someone said that driving a car, because of the component of fossil fuels, is going to be looked at the same way. And some could argue it's looked at like that now. So we're going to have these more efficient vehicles. We're going to have people that don't want to own, that want to ride share, and whatever that means. And I think that the dealership model as it stands now, I'm not so sure it's going to be, well, I know it won't be the same. I think the pay plans will change. I think there will be and still need for salespeople. But I see a streamlined model where you don't have the middle management so much. There's still going to be a need for vehicle repair. But I think the thing that scares people is they think it's going to all go away. And I don't think it's all going to go away. I think virtual reality and augmented reality is going to have a component, especially with regard to giving the customer a better experience while they're demoing the vehicle online. That's where the manufacturers can really kick in, because, you know, dealers don't have that type of budget for manufacturers do. And you see some of them at least I read that they're doing it. So I think just the takeaway is, like, not to be afraid that it's all going to go away one day and the dealerships are going to be extinct. It's understand that this came about partially because people don't want to go to dealerships. And so try to deliver the best experience you can to your customers and constantly reinvent what that is. And then also embrace these new forms of transportation and these new ideas around people, just like the automotive transportation model, and keep your ear to the ground of, like, what's new and what's coming.
All right. My promise to everyone who watches the Get You Some radio show is that each week you're going to get one action step, one thing that you can turn off the computer, shut down the phone, and step back into the real world. One thing that you can do today as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur, as a dealer. One thing that you can do to start making your life better and your business better, because I try to get everything going hand in hand. So it's a business and life. So I asked every guest, Kathi, what's one thing people can do today to start building a better business and building a better life?
I would say the one thing is constantly be learning, spend 15 minutes a day minimum, but 15 minutes a day reading books, following your favorite blogs, keeping your ear to the ground about what's going on. Do critical thinking around that. When you gather information, don't be waiting for somebody to tell you how it is. Gather the information and decide for yourself where you see things are going, and be able to be decisive about that, because I think critical thinking is going to be, it really is such an important part of anything, of a business, of just the way that you spend your time. And constantly, like I say, constantly learn, have that all leaders are learners. So I do it. Every day I'm constantly consuming content that I think is interesting, or another point of view, or something that's going to guide me to do something better and have a better impact.
All right. Thank you so much, Kathi. What's next for you? What are you excited about right now?
What am I excited about? Let's see. There's so many things. I'm excited about, because I've shifted my gears a bit, and I'm doing more. I'm going back to the operational consulting side of things. I kind of have speaking of differentiating yourself, I have a kind of a clairvoyance about dealership profitability, and I think it comes from those days of working all the jobs, but it's just been in my blood, and I just feel that gives me more motivation, and I'm more excited to do that. And especially now that I've been in the social media space for 9 years, or really just digital marketing space, I can bring that, because I think needs to be a kind of a conduit between the business model today and the digital customer. And like we talked earlier about turning into that, being able to morph into that e-commerce. And let's see what's exciting for me personally. I think just there's there's a lot of issues around wild and domestic horses right now that are causing everybody to kind of wake up. And I think the apathy is kind of falling away, and it's nice to see people getting on the horn to their Congress people and their senators and expressing their views. So that part's exciting for me.
All right. How do we get in touch with you if we need to get in touch with you, Kathi?
Oh gosh, I'm everywhere on social. Kathi Kruse, my Twitter handle is Kathi Kruse, and my website's cruisecontrolinc.com. I just built cruisecontrolauto.com to kind of separate the automotive component. And my email is Kathi@cruisecontrolinc.com.
Thank you so much. Y'all get in touch with Kathi. Pick up a copy of the book, Automotive Social Business 2.0, and be sure to subscribe. 2 subscribers of the week this week are going to walk home with copies. Thank you so much, Kathi, for taking your time to talk with us. Have a great day.
Awesome. You're welcome.
Being the boss is fun. Taking your ideas, turning them into something new, and watching it grow. Oh, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun until it's not. Most businesses reach a point where good ideas, common sense, and hard work just aren't enough anymore. They get stuck. Now, it's time to get unstuck. Unstuck 10 proven strategies for breaking through the barriers to small business growth. Get your copy today and get unstuck.
Get You Some Radio. You've been listening to the Get You Some Radio Show. Subscribe today at terrylancaster.tv to hear more episodes, win valuable cash and prizes, and get free training to help you create an army of buyers who know, like, and trust you before they've ever even met you. It's a big, wide world, boys and girls. Get out there and get you some.